Hey there, Sunday morning, and as usual, as I usually make these on Sunday morning, I finished this project last night actually, and then I very quickly edited the video that I hope you watched this morning because I just released it this morning. This was kind of a last minute thing. I started another project last weekend and it took a long time to make it, and I'm doing it in such a way that there's going to be like a course involved with it. So there's going to be a number of videos that go along with it. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with that, how I'm going to work at that just yet. I just know that after I get the project mostly done, I started editing the videos, and I got 5 videos edited so far. And then I finished the project. Although it's not 100% finished, it still needs to be a second coat of oil. I have the first coat on, but I brought it out here to put on the second coat, and then I need to take pictures and so on and so forth. But doing this gave me an extra week to mess around with that and get everything done rather than trying to rush it and missing some things, or, getting in a panic. I perform well under pressure. I like the pressure. I respond well to pressure. Like getting this thing here finished. Like I basically started this yesterday morning, finished it yesterday evening, and then edited the video that you hopefully watched this morning. So all in one day, right? And next to no planning involved. I had a rough idea about this before. I talked about doing SketchUp Doodle before, like I drew some stuff up in SketchUp. So I opened that file, I played with that just a little bit, not a lot, because I couldn't, spend time with it. And then I downloaded this protractor template. I printed that out like 5 times to try different sizes and all that and check for accuracy. And then I came up with this design here, which is not perfect, but it does the job, and it does do a couple of things for me in that, like, I wanted to test out some stuff. I obviously knew that this part here would work, but I wanted to know how quickly it was to adjust it. This part that grips onto the edge of the sheet, not only on here, but up at the ends as well, because that's rabbited out to fit on there too. So, you just use that. I had a similar thing on my old table saw with the sliding table, right? So I just wanted to check it out here and see, because this is pretty thin, this 1/2-inch plywood. Other things I wanted to test. The full scale. I don't think you need it. I don't think you need to go from 0 to 180. You definitely can't use those end numbers. Like I cut a 20-degree angle after I was done, but going beyond that, I don't think it's practical with something like this. I think in a final version, I would limit that to, say, somewhere between, say, 15 and right up to, say, 120. So it doesn't swing back all this way, so that the distance that I have on this end over here, I could put up here and still keep the thing relatively the same size. Actually, I'd make it a bit longer, right? Because you really want to have the capacity to cut wider panels with something like this. I'm trying to find the slot. And at this point, you can probably get maybe a 20-inch panel and cut it accurately. However, you're losing some width whenever you're making an angle cut, so you really want to have more distance on the other end, right? Because if you're just going to make a square cut, this is the jig that you would use. So yeah, the other thing that I really was keen to test out, because this was just a rough idea I had. Like, one of the problems with something like this is that, okay, the edge of the fence lines up with the marks on the scale. So you don't have a pointer that you can adjust, right? Whereas on, say, on a miter saw, you'll have a pointer that you can adjust, so for accuracy. This has this pivot point back here that has that hole in the center, and this thing is bolted onto it, but it's slightly offset, so that you can loosen this nut right here and move it back and forth, and it will pull this end of the fence in and out, almost like an eccentric nut, the same way that works, to make those fine adjustments. And I showed that in the video. I don't know how clear it was. It's difficult to explain these types of actions or methods, even with video. I mean, people watch it and they don't understand what you're doing. You have to be, like, you have to understand the concept before you even watch it, and you'll understand. You know, there are exceptions. I'm not saying this is everybody, but most people have to have a basic understanding of it before they'll understand what they're watching. Anyway, so yeah, I'm happy with how it worked out. One of the bigger things is that I went ahead and I glued this strip on the bottom with the thing tight up against the blade. And one of my original ideas for this was for it to replace the compound cutting action on my miter saw. Remember, I made the new fence for my miter saw, and that made it so I can't tilt the saw. And I was saying to myself, well, you can always do that on the table saw. And to get a compound miter, then you would have this scale here. However, this is too close to the blade, as it is right now. I really have to take this strip off the back, because you can see here that the thing is almost coming through the edge. And in fact, I had to, because I was a little bit sloppy making this, I had to glue in some washers in here to pad that down, because like I cut that thing too deep, either in the plate here or in the sled base. And so I just glued in those washers and actually cut through. I cut through the edge of the washer right there on my first cut. So really this strip should be closer here, but then it kind of gets in the way, because that's the other thing I was thinking about. Is it going to get in the way of this plate as it rotates? So there are a few things that I have to refine and work out. When I get the time, I'll sit down with SketchUp and I'll, take what I've learned here and I'll come up with a killer design for this kind of thing. The other thing worth mentioning is that there's a second component that goes with this that I didn't make in the video, but I talked about in the build article. And it would be a piece that goes over here on the other side of the blade to support the work. If you have a longer cut and you don't have any support over there, it will pinch on the blade. And okay, best is that it ruins your cut, or if you get a clean cut from it that you can use, is good. But worst is that it creates a kickback. So you need that piece that goes on the other side of the blade to support the work there. Here's the step stool here that I was talking about. It's solid ash, that dark piece that I talked about before. And, I talked about red oak, not liking the color of red oak. But with the oil on it, this looks almost identical to red oak. So I could have used a red oak for this. But then again, what would I use this piece of ash for? It doesn't match the other stuff, because it's considerably darker than the blonde stuff. Yeah, see the difference? It's got the same grain, but it's darker. Okay, heartwood. I'm going to sand this with 320, give it another coat of oil, then I'm going to have to bring it inside my house to let it cure, because it's too cold in here. One of the things that I was going to do this summer was I was going to weld up a small, almost like a rocket stove, and try to do something in here. But then I said to myself, are you actually going to use that, John? Because, okay, like I've said many times before, I don't spend a lot of time out in the shop. Like my week is made up mostly of doing stuff in front of the computer, like editing and stuff like that, or designing stuff. But out here in the winter, it's like 5 degrees. I've got a heater that keeps it at that temperature. If I know that I'm going to be out here working all day like I was yesterday, I'll turn the heat up to 10 or 15 degrees. Depends upon what I'm doing. If I'm gluing stuff, I definitely will. If I'm just working, I can stay warm doing that. But it's too cold out here for this oil to properly set up, so I'll have to bring it in the house.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, I was just consulting with an associate. Now, Mrs. Gutman, do you know a man named David Gonzalez?
Well, he's the tennis pro at the club.
The tennis pro. Then why are your letters addressed to him? Dear David and Goliath.